The early 2000s were a time of experimentation in gaming, with passionate communities reshaping existing games to create entirely new experiences. Among these grassroots innovations was Defense of the Ancients, better known as DOTA, a Warcraft III mod that didn't just become a hit, but laid the foundation for an entire genre, the multiplayer online battle arena, also known as MOBA. What started as a fan made project soon evolved into a global phenomenon, birthing a genre that emphasized teamwork, strategy, and skill. From Dota's humble beginnings to the rise of giants like League of Legends and Dota 2, the MOBA genre has redefined competitive gaming, becoming a cornerstone of the esports world. Today, we're tracing the history of Dota and also the MOBA genre, exploring its grassroots origins, explosive growth, and lasting impact on gaming culture. So rally your team, claim your lane, and join us for today's strategic trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 248th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are diving into Defense of the Ancients and the birth of the MOBA genre. From its humble beginnings as a mod for Warcraft III to the global phenomenon of modern titles like League of Legends and Dota 2, we're going to be exploring how MOBAs became a cornerstone of competitive gaming. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably spend more time arguing with his teammates than defending the ancient. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, do you think you're a better support player, or that you just kind of, end up sacrificing yourself to the enemy team?
It depends on the day. Sometimes I can be good help. Sometimes I'm just fodder.
Yeah, I'm mostly just fodder. You spent any time playing MOBAs?
I played League for about a year or two in college, and then did a little bit with Smite. But League was by far my most played.
Never transferred over to Dota?
I never got into Dota. No, none of my friends played it. All my friends played League, so that's really all I did. Because you know me, I'm a creature of habit. I play games with friends like that.
No.
I hate
Yeah.
playing with randoms because randoms are fucking stupid.
Yeah, we're social gamers. I get it.
But you're
Yeah.
right. I do spend half of the time arguing with people because they're freaking idiots, and they call me an idiot, and I'm like, no, fuck you. So then I will just ruin their game. I have no problem. Fuck my rank. I don't care.
So the gist of it is that you are familiar with our genre, but not our game.
Exactly.
That's fair. I never
Better than
really.
normal.
Yeah, I mean, it is better than normal. It's kind of a step up on me because I maybe played a handful of games of each, and it just never stuck with me. I never got to the point where I really understood what I was doing. Never got to the point where it hooked me enough to want to understand what I was doing. You know?
Yep. No, I can tell you top, middle, bottom lane, jungle. You know, I was a jungler or a mid lane, which was really surprising because I played Cho'Gath. For all the people that know, Cho'Gath middle lane is an odd choice. But that was what I did, and I was pretty damn good at it. So
Well, there you go. Some of what we're going to talk about today, you're going to understand better than some. Before we get to that story, however, why don't you take some time and tell our listeners what else has happened during this week in gaming history?
Well, kicking it off on May 30th, 1979, IRM Corporation, the predecessor to what would become Capcom, was founded. Initially established as Integrated Research and Manufacturing Corporation, the company began as a joint venture that primarily focused on manufacturing and distributing electronic game machines. Over time, the company saw a strategic opportunity to shift focus towards the development of video games. In 1983, the entity known as Capcom was officially formed from IRM as an acronym for Capsule Computers, a term they used to describe their arcade machines, which were designed to be robust, like capsules. Capcom would go on to become one of the most influential game developers and publishers in the industry, known for iconic franchises such as Street Fighter, Resident Evil, and Mega Man. This shift marked the beginning of a new era for Capcom, setting the stage for its future success in the gaming world. Next up, on May 27, 1986, Dragon Warrior, or Dragon Quest in Japan, was released, marking the beginning of what would become one of the most influential and beloved RPG franchises. Developed by Enix, now Square Enix, and created by Yuji Horii, the game was designed to be accessible to a broader audience with its simplified RPG mechanics compared to more complex titles of the time. Set in a medieval fantasy realm, players take on the role of a hero tasked with rescuing a princess and saving the kingdom from the evil dragon lord. Kind of sounds familiar if you play a lot of games from that era. Dragon Warrior is credited with laying the foundations for the JRPG genre, featuring turn based combat, a detailed storyline, and character progression, elements that have become staples in RPGs worldwide. Its release marked a significant point in video game history, influencing countless developers and titles in the RPG genre. And if you want to learn more about this, we covered it back in episode 143, so go check it out. Next up, on May 31st, 2005, Advent Rising was released for the Xbox, marking the debut of an ambitious sci-fi action-adventure developed by GlyphX Games and published by Majesco Entertainment. Envisioned as the first installment of a trilogy, the game featured a narrative crafted by Donald and Jeremy Mustard, with a script co-written by renowned science fiction author Orson Scott Card. Players assume the role of Gideon Wyeth, a rookie pilot who discovers latent superhuman abilities while confronting an alien race known as the Seekers, who aim to exterminate humanity. The gameplay combined third-person shooting mechanics with unlockable psychic powers, set against a backdrop of interstellar conflict. Despite its cinematic aspirations and a soundtrack composed by Tommy Tallarico, Advent Rising received mixed reviews, with critics citing technical issues and unfulfilled potential. Commercially, the game underperformed, leading to the cancellation of planned sequels and a PSP spin-off titled Advent Shadow. Nevertheless, Advent Rising has since garnered a cult following, remembered for its ambitious storytelling and a unique blend of action and science fiction. Next, on May 27, 2009, 38 Studios, the game development studio founded by former MLB pitcher Curt Schilling, acquired Big Huge Games from THQ. This acquisition preserved approximately 70 jobs at Big Huge Games, which had been facing closure due to THQ's financial difficulties. Big Huge Games, renowned for titles like Rise of Nations, brought valuable real-time strategy and role-playing games expertise to 38 Studios. The acquisition was a strategic move to bolster 38 Studios' development capabilities for their ambitious fantasy IP, codenamed Copernicus. Under 38 Studios, Big Huge Games contributed to the development of Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning, released in 2012, but unfortunately closed when Big Huge Games also closed later that same year. And last up for this week in gaming history, on May 27, 2014, Watch Dogs was released for the PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC, introducing players to a near-future Chicago where surveillance and technology intertwine. Developed by Ubisoft Montreal, the game centers on Aiden Pierce, a skilled hacker seeking vengeance after a personal tragedy. Utilizing the city's central operating system, or CTOS, players can manipulate traffic lights, security cameras, and more to achieve their objectives. Watch Dogs received generally favorable reviews for its innovative gameplay and open world design, though it did face criticism for narrative and technical issues. Despite this, the game was a commercial success, shipping over 8 million copies by July of 2014.
All right, Rob. Today, we are not just looking at the origins of a game, like I said, but rather at the birth of an entire genre.
Ooh.
And that genre is known as the multiplayer online battle arena. We call them MOBAs. And for those of you who don't play MOBAs, I thought I would start out with the definition so that we all kind of have an idea of what we're working towards as we learn today's story. According to Wikipedia, a MOBA is a subgenre of strategy video games in which two teams of players compete on a structured battlefield, each controlling a single character with distinctive abilities that grow stronger as the match progresses. For those of you who do play MOBAs, it's a team based strategy game where 5 players push 3 lanes while yelling at each other in chat.
Damn straight.
When Blizzard released StarCraft in March of 1998, they included a campaign editor where you as a player could create your own custom level with scripted events. And so our story starts today with one of these custom StarCraft maps created by a player known to the world simply as Aeon64. The map is known as Aeon of Strife. And what Aeon of Strife did is it flipped the usual real-time strategy formula on its head. Because of course StarCraft is a typical RTS. And instead of managing a whole army like one does in a typical RTS, each player got to control just one powerful hero unit. And so 4 players would team up with their heroes to take on waves of weaker AI allies. Well, no, they would team up with waves of allies to take on the computer. And basically you would try to protect yourself from these enemies. And if your base got wrecked or if your whole squad got wiped out, you would lose. Essentially, the difference is you control one hero unit and not an entire army. That's the basis. That's where we are. Later on, Aeon of Strife got an update that allowed for player versus player combat, which essentially turned it into a 2-on-2 face-off. And in Aeon of Strife, players weren't there to build bases, they weren't there micromanaging armies. Their job was simply to tip the scales of battle by showing up at the right place at the right time. I think that sums up MOBAs pretty well, huh?
Yeah, I would agree.
By backing up their own waves of AI controlled units, they could help push through enemy defenses and eventually push their way to take down the opposing base. And of course, the enemy heroes were doing the exact same thing, so essentially, hero versus hero battles became the highlight of this game mode. It never really became a massive hit, but it built a loyal little community, and in doing so, it laid the foundation for something much, much bigger. Blizzard's next big strategy release came a few years later in 2002 with Warcraft III. And just like they did with Warcraft 2 and StarCraft, Blizzard packed Warcraft 3 with a free world editor, which was basically a sandbox that let players build their own maps and build out their own scenarios. And then you could take those creations, those custom maps, campaigns, and so on, and so on and so forth, and you could play them online through BattleNet, play them with others through BattleNet. So it was a lot of people. People's creativity ran with it, and Warcraft 3 in itself featured powerful hero units. These hero units could level up, they could equip items, and so this world editor gave modders the tool to go wild, right? It let them build completely custom heroes, custom abilities, and therefore entirely new ways to play the game, essentially. Drawing inspiration from the StarCraft custom map Aeon of Strife, a modder known as Yol started to develop a similar map that would support up to 10 players. Now, the core gameplay stuck to the roots, right? It was a real time strategy style. There was point and click control of a single hero, but now those heroes came with wildly different abilities. They could buy all sorts of gear, and they could level up to unlock even more powerful skills. Taking down enemy heroes or the AI units earned you experience and gold, and every time an opposing hero went down and had to wait to respawn, it gave your team a chance to tip the battle in your favor. He basically took the old formula, he let more people play at once, now we had 10 players, and he added RPG elements to the old Aeon of Strife gameplay. So, about when Blizzard releases the Frozen Throne expansion, Yoel makes the decision to stop updating what's now called the Defense Against the Ancients scenario. And because he was stepping away from it, he made his map code open source so that others could continue his work. And absolutely they did. Alternative maps began to come out. People added their own heroes, their own items, they added custom features. There was a whole slew of these that came out, after Yoel decided to stop with Defense Against the Ancients. One of these alternatives that began to stand out among the rest took all of the popular heroes and ideas from other maps and compiled them into one place. Now, this was built by a pair of map makers called Mayan and Ragnar, and it was called DOTA Allstars, Defense Against the Ancients Allstars, and it cranked everything up to like 11 from the original Defense Against the Ancients. This map was packed with neutral monsters to fight for extra gold and XP. It featured a huge roster of heroes to choose from, and it introduced a deep item system. There were even recipes that would let you combine gear to make even more powerful gear and artifacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was complex, it was chaotic, and it was unlike anything else that was quite out there at the time. In March of 2004, another map maker, Steve Guinsoo Feek, took over the development of DOTA Allstars. Feek took things even further by adding an item recipe system, and that let players upgrade their gear as their heroes got stronger. He also introduced Roshan, a tough boss named after his bowling ball
Nice.
that took an entire team to bring down. Taking out Roshan gave teams a huge advantage, and that made him a key objective in every match. And so it was really during this time when Feek had control of DOTA Allstars and was making these, I guess, not I guess, he was making these really great improvements to it that the community really began to grow. There wasn't an official site for DOTA Allstars at the time, right? Because it was, at this point, a Warcraft III mod. And so players mostly gathered in a Battle.net chat channel to connect. But that would only get them so far because Battle.net chat channels, where when you're on, you see what's there, and when you're not, you don't.
Right.
And so the leaders of the DOTA All-Star clan, which is known as TDA, realized that the community needed something more stable than just, you know, a chat and scattered forums on the web and half abandoned websites. So one of their members, a guy by the name of Steve Pendragon Moscone, stepped up and built DotaAllstars.com, and that quickly became the central hub for everything Dota. After 2 years, Feek handed over development to a new lead, a reclusive modder named Abdul IceFrog Ishmael. Ishmael.
What awesome names.
IceFrog,
IceFrog, Pendragon.
Guinsoo,
I
yeah.
mean, fantastic.
Yeah, Ragnar, Mayan. These are, I mean, this is when you know that, this game is being developed by a gaming community. We've never really talked about this, but I've been writing a book. My first book in this. I don't know when I'll ever finish, but that's okay. And that's exactly what the book is about. The book is about how gamers the players themselves have basically crafted gaming history, right? I got the idea. The title of the book tentatively was Early Access, and I kind of got the idea one day when we were talking about Zork. Do you remember how Zork used to have the patch notes in the game itself?
Yeah.
And then people would like respond back and give them feedback because at the time this was on like the precursor to the internet. It was on the like defense, the I can't remember what the internet was called before it was the internet. But
DARPA?
they DARPA. Yeah, well whatever DARPA was making at the time, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Intranet or yeah, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. So basically, like that's where I got the idea because they were putting these games on these mainframes. Zork, Colossal Cave Adventure has two versions. One guy made the game, and then the most popular version was a guy who found it on the mainframe and improved on it. And those are two early examples, but here we have a later example, and there are a ton in the middle of where it's not I mean, it is the developers, we'll never take credit away, but that these games have legitimately been crafted and refined by their communities. And so, as much as I hate the term early access because I think it has a negative connotation for unfinished games, the reality is we've been playing unfinished games since the very beginning. Um, and this is perfect. So you hear names like Guinsoo and Feek and Ragnar, and you realize that this is another example of a game that's being made by its community. This is a whole genre, literally, that's made by its community, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, now I'm on the hook for my book because I just set it on air. I can edit that out, can't I? Yeah. Anyway, who knows? Coming sometime in the next decade. So Dota Allstars gets made, and Feek is done, so he hands development over to a new lead, IceFrog. And IceFrog, what IceFrog really liked about this environment, he was a big Blizzard fan, and he really liked how StarCraft and Warcraft were really tuned and balanced. That is what they are very well known for. If you're an RTS fan, is that when Blizzard releases a new real time strategy, typically it is an incredibly balanced game, and that makes it fun, right? Because it's no fun when you have a faction, for instance, that could constantly wipe the floor with everyone else. Then no one has a reason not to pick that faction.
True.
But when you balance out the factions, there's a lot of variety and it's a lot of fun. So IceFrog wanted to make Dota as tuned and balanced as StarCraft and Warcraft. So he made that his mission to refine the details and balance it out. While most multiplayer games added new maps with every update, Dota All Stars stuck with just one. He didn't want to give more maps, he wanted to craft a single, perfectly balanced battlefield. No hero combo should dominate, no item build should break the game. Everything was about precision, and IceFrog was constantly updating stats, skills, and items to keep the Dota experience as fair and competitive as possible. He would people would post something on the website and he would make a change the next day type deal. Now, IceFrog was famously reclusive when he first took over this job. He was well known for not doing any interviews. He didn't have any public appearances. He did not want to be in the spotlight. For a while, the only proof that he was real was an email address on the official site and his name on the game's loading screen.
Nice.
Like I said, despite that, he was incredibly active behind the scenes. The game was maintained through its official forums. Players could suggest new heroes, items, and balance tweaks, some of which made it into the game. He was quick to respond to feedback, and he would regularly push out the updates to keep things fresh. Meanwhile, Pendragon continued running DotaAllstars.com, which by this point in mid 2009 had over 1.5 million registered users and was drawing in more than 1 million unique visitors every month.
God damn.
Right?
Them some numbers.
Them's some numbers. Let me remind you that Dota defense of the agents. It was defense against the agents in the beginning, but now it's defense of the agents. Dota still just a mod for Warcraft 3, right?
Yeah.
That means you have to buy Warcraft 3. That means that you have to download, not that downloading adding a mod to Warcraft 3 is complicated, but it means you got to buy Warcraft 3, you got to play Warcraft 3, and you got to mod Warcraft 3. We're 6 years after the map is first released in 2003, it's 2009, and there are still over 1 million people regularly playing this game every single day.
That's insane.
It's insane. You know, Rob, it's kind of wild that something as massive as the MOBA genre, one of the biggest in the world now, started as a mod made by a handful of hobbyists just messing around in a map editor.
Yeah, from a StarCraft custom map to an entire gaming phenomenon, millions of players, billion-dollar franchises, and it all started because one guy thought, what if I could just control one unit instead of an army?
Exactly. It just goes to show that big ideas don't always need big budgets. Sometimes all it takes is the right tools and the right platform to bring your vision to life. Which is why, if you've got a story to share, Zencaster is the perfect place to start your podcasting journey.
All right, so for the folks out there dreaming up the next big idea, what makes Zencaster the go-to tool?
Zencaster is an all in one podcasting platform that lets you record high quality audio and video right from your browser. There's no fancy equipment, no complicated setups. Just log in, hit record, and you're ready to share your voice.
Well, that sounds great, but let's say my first draft sounds a little like a Warcraft 3 unit yelling, work, work. What then?
Ark, ark. That's where Zencaster shines. Its post production tools automatically clean up your audio, balance sound levels, and even cut out background noise and filler words like or It's like having your own IceFrog behind the scenes, tweaking everything until it sounds perfect.
All right, but once we've got the episode recorded, how do we get it out to the world?
Zencaster makes distribution super easy. You can publish your podcast straight to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the major platforms without leaving the dashboard.
Well, you've convinced me. And for our listeners that are also convinced, how do they get started?
Just head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane. You can get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan. Whether you're just getting started or looking to grow your show, Zencaster has the tools to help you do it right.
So if you've got a big idea, one that just might change the game, Zencaster can help you bring it to life, one episode at a time.
One episode at a time, indeed. So head over to Zencaster, use our code, memory card lane, all one word, and get started today.
With that, let's get back to how Dota went from fan-made experiment to the foundation of a global phenomenon.
So, with millions of people playing Dota, which was still simply a mod at this point, there is no doubt that other video game developers took notice of its popularity. Because money, right?
Money.
Because money. There are millions of people playing this every day. Money. The first standalone game in the MOBA genre was called Demigod, which was created by Gas Powered Games. However, it was absolutely shadowed by the game that would become the giant of the genre, which is League of Legends. Now, League deserves its own episode, so I'm not going to get into its story in too much detail. But the gist of it is that, like we've heard so many times before, Rob, there were two guys who saw Dota and said, hey, we can make this and we can support it through a free to play model, which at the time, about 2009, 2010, was kind of unheard of in the North American market. It was an Asian market thing, and free to play wasn't really a thing over here yet. And they thought that they could use MOBA to create a successful free to play model here.
Makes sense.
I mean, it obviously worked, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So essentially, what they did is they recruited the guys who created Dota. Feek. Uh, they created Guinsoo. They recruited Guinsoo, and they recruited Pendragon, and the four of them built a team that would develop the game that would later become League of Legends. That's essentially how League of Legends came to be.
All right.
But at about the same time, the video game publisher Valve bought the intellectual rights to the Dota property. And in October of 2009, they hired IceFrog himself to lead a team that would develop a standalone sequel to the mod, which would become known as Dota 2. And this brought up an interesting fight over the name Dota itself, because of course, Dota is just a mod for Warcraft 3, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, we have a website, DOTA which was operated under a company, DOTA Allstars LLC. And so when Feek and Pendragon went to work for Riot Games, who is the company that created League of Legends, if you don't know, DOTA Allstars LLC, which they formed, became a subsidiary of Riot Games.
Nice.
So Dota Allstars, the name, was essentially kind of owned by its competitor, League of Legends.
That's wild. Didn't know.
Basically, Dota Allstars LLC argued that the name Dota was a community asset of the website. And then at one point, Blizzard bought Dota Allstars LLC, and they argued in court then, now that they had the namesake, that the Dota name belonged to the mod community because they owned Dota Allstars, because Dota itself was a mod derived from one of their games, and because of that, they owned the Dota name and no one else could possibly use it. Makes sense.
Does indeed.
In the end, Blizzard and Valve settled their dispute. Valve ended up winning the commercial rights to the Dota trademark, meaning they can make games and sell them commercially, while the other result is that they still had to allow the non-commercial use of the name by third parties. So Blizzard got to keep their mod Dota basically, and if anyone else wanted to use the phrase Dota to make mods, they wouldn't be allowed to be trademarked if it was non-commercial. So of course, while all this was happening, Valve was hard at work at creating Dota 2, right? And Dota 2 finally gets released on July 9th, 2013. So, Rob, let's kind of go back and talk about what happened once Dota caught fire, because it didn't just become popular, it turned into a full blown phenomenon, right?
I suppose, but I'm sure you'll tell us more.
Well, Dota has deep mechanics and a high skill ceiling. Fair statements. Is that a fair statement for all MOBAs?
Yeah, I'd say so.
You feel like League has a high skill ceiling?
I'm sure that it does. I have a friend who could tell you a lot better than I could because I never played too much competitive, but it definitely has a lot to learn.
It definitely has a lot to learn. So basically, because of this, it found a natural home in competitive play, right? And so it debuted on the competitive esports scene at BlizzCon in 2005. And basically, from there, it started to trickle through the competitive circuit, the esports circuit, right? We're on to esports. In Malaysia and Singapore in 2005, it was at the World Cyber Games. It became a regular part of the Asian Championships from 2006 on. It made its way into established leagues like the Cyber Athlete Amateur League and Cyber Evolution. And when it landed a spot finally at the 2008 Electronic Sports World Cup, the tournament director actually cited Dota's global popularity and dedicated community as the reasons they included it. And that is a big deal, especially for a game that was really still just a mod, right?
Right.
Dota, along with League of Legends, really established the multiplayer online battle arena genre as one that was super exciting in terms of competitive gaming. Do you remember how big MOBAs got in the competitive gaming circuit?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like, we've always kind of been into Rocket League competitively because that's our game. But I don't remember. And look, it may just be that I don't pay attention to others. I know that there have been other tournaments. There have been the Evos, which are fighting, and like we said here, all these amateur league cyber evolutions. I don't remember like stadiums being full of people and the pageantry of it until MOBAs joined the scene. Do you?
I wasn't too into competitive gaming, so I can't say that I do, but I definitely remember that when I was still learning League of Legends, that I would watch some tournament play to try and get better with characters. So,
So you were using competitive play to learn how to play League better.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's good. That's very
I've
good.
done that with most competitive games. Rocket League, when I was playing Rainbow Six Siege. Um, those were really the big ones that I actually Overwatch as well. When I was big into that, always just tried to pick up on what the professionals were doing and learn from the best. That's sometimes the best way to do it is you can try on your own, but there's someone out there who would kick your ass. Why not take a few things from their book and learn?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about prior to that, and I'm kind of looking. I'm cheating and looking at history, and really, we had. I mean, I remember competitive Counter Strike, which is one of the earliest, and Descent, Unreal Tournament, Quake tourneys. I remember those. Um, this is for CPL. We didn't really get franchise leagues until like Overwatch League in 2016. I don't know uh, when the Rocket League series came out. Let's see, Evolution Championship Series. We just talked about that. Call of Duty had a series. StarCraft. Oh yeah. Oh, maybe I remember StarCraft 2 competitive gaming, but um this kind of would have gotten its rise about the same time, since this was a mod. StarCraft 2 would have been Warcraft 3 era. So anyway, Dota itself started to build up a really healthy and competitive esports circuit, right? And so that carried over to Dota 2. In fact, when Valve wanted to release Dota 2, they invited like the 16 best Dota players to like unveil it in like a tournament environment, if I remember correctly. So people were excited for it from the competitive gaming standpoint. Dota 2, like League of Legends, is supported by a free to play model. And for those of you that don't know what a free to play model is, that's basically where you don't pay for the game itself. There are a lot of free to play games. Fortnite, that we talk about, is one of the most popular ones. You have Dota. I think Counter Strike is now free to play. Rocket League is free to play. There are a lot of free to play. And essentially, where companies make their money is they sell content in the game, mostly cosmetic. So, in the case of Fortnite, you can buy skins and emotes and stuff like that. You played League, so in a MOBA, what would people buy? What would people buy?
Skins,
Skins,
character skins,
so
yeah.
you could make your heroes look like different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, pretty much
Essentially,
just like Overwatch or Fortnite, the same things. You just different skins you could use, make your characters look different, have special things, and.
yeah. I would like to add that in a good free to play model, you don't. They're not pay to win. Essentially, like your skins don't change the way your character behaves, so you can't buy in a game like this. And pretty much all your popular ones, you can't spend money to make you better, essentially. So, anyway, Dota 2 is consistently one of the most played games on Steam, with over a million people concurrently playing it on any given day during its peak. In fact, I looked at its peak. I think its peak was 1.6 million people concurrently playing it. I looked it up a few days ago. It was the second most played game on Steam with about 600,000 people playing at the time. Counter Strike was number one, in case you're wondering. And number three was this weird game called Bongo Cat. I have no I have
Okay.
no idea. Or something about a cat where like you type things on a keyboard. I It had 100,000 people playing, but it was the third most at the time. The annual Esports World Championship for Dota 2 is called the International. And the prize pool for the International is supported by the Battle Pass system within the game itself. And the Battle Pass in all these games is basically a seasonal subscription for cosmetic items, in case you don't know. And a quarter of all the revenue made from the Battle Pass becomes the prize pool for each year's International. Make sense?
Yeah,
Are we following?
sure are.
So the first time they ever crowdfunded, the International started in 2011, and the very first couple were funded by Valve. They were $1 million grand prizes, right? Let's see. Prize pool for International 2 was 1.6 million, and then they started crowdfunding it with the Game Pass in with International 3. And so the prize pool the first year they crowdfunded it was $2.8 million.
Damn.
That kept growing until we got to 2021. And in 2021, the International offered up the largest esports prize pool in the history of competitive gaming. And that prize pool was just over $40 million.
Jeez.
It's the, like I said, largest single prize pool for any single esports event in history. That
That's insane.
that meant that the winners of the International 2021, also known as International 10, the winning team walked away with $18.2 million.
Wow. Just wow.
Number two, second place team walked away with $5.2 million. Third place walked away with 3.6. Fourth place walked away with 2.4 million. Fifth and sixth got 1.4 million. Seventh and eighth got 1 million. Ninth through 12th got 800,000. 13th through 16th got 600,000. And 17th and 18th got $100,000.
That's a lot.
It's crazy to think that the first one had $1 million grand prize, and by the time we got to the 10th one, you could win $1 million by coming in eighth place.
Yeah, that's a very drastic difference.
Now, obviously, that was probably the height of Dota's popularity, right? Because it has gone down for the past 2 years. 2021 was also, to be fair, still kind of pandemic era. People were stuck in their house and spending a lot more time doing online gaming as a result. So who knows if we'll ever see a prize pool that big ever again, but it's still fun. It still shows that there is definitely money to be had in video games, right?
Oh, there definitely is. That I don't see that ever changing.
It's crazy, man, to think about winning $18 million for winning a gaming tournament.
Yeah, but it's a lot of time, a lot of effort put in. People want to say that esports aren't sports, but I'd argue that some of the esports players put just as much effort in as football, baseball, hockey players. It might not be as physical, but goddamn, is it a mental drain?
2021, like I said, was a pandemic year, so there really wasn't an audience. They kind of kept it to they kept it to just the production teams. But there are typically people that join these, and like I said, they're in big stadiums, and this gets watched online by, like, I mean, probably millions of people, to be fair.
Oh, definitely.
It's I'm trying to see if I can find the most recent, like, if it shows. So for the International 2023, They held the finals weekend in a arena that seated 18,300 people. So 18,000 went to a stadium to watch people play video games.
And that's just physically at that location. That does not include any of the people watching from home.
Yeah, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. I mean, it was streamed everywhere. The purse for International 2023, just so we can know how far we came, was only $3.3 million.
I mean, hey, that's still a hell of a lot
It's
to
still a
play
lot of money.
games.
Absolutely. The winners walked away with $1.5 million. Ain't nothing to shy at. So,
Not at all. Not for a game they paid. I mean, granted, probably thousands if they were buying all the skins and stuff, but still,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
you buy a game, you put a tons of hours into it, and you get paid. If you divide that 5 ways, still a few hundred grand. That's pretty damn good takeaway.
Well, it's crazy to think that this idea, this little mod for StarCraft, would grow into a genre that featured a competitive tournament in which someone could win $18 million. Like when I think about that trajectory, it blows my mind every time. You know,
Yeah, no, it's wild to think that. I mean, it's a crazy thought, and it's something we hope we can continue to see is the gamers improving upon the games they love and finding new ways to make more games that we can love and hopefully be competitive in.
and it's one more mod that became something big. I mean, there are various examples of it. Yeah, that is definitely an example of players creating a game, players creating community, players creating a genre, no less. A great example there. So um, that is Defense Against the Agents, and that is the birth of the MOBA genre. There are a lot of other things that we touched on today, like StarCraft and League of Legends. And in the beginning, we talked a little bit about how this was the week of Capcom and Dragon Warrior. And there are just a lot of other stories to be had that we touched on today. And of course, if you're interested in checking out any of our old stories, you can do so by going to our website, which is www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people do on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episode topics, get an idea of what we're going to be talking about, and maybe it'll be your favorite game, and you'll want to catch that episode. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad free and unedited versions of our episodes. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come chat with Dave and I about episode topics or gaming related content. And you can find links to our social media where I can be found on several platforms as Rob _O _Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is Wrong. Each week, we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, it can be about a console, it can be about a person, it can be about a museum, it can be about technology. If I want to take it and make sure it's relevant to this publication week, that's what we do. We roll with that. Well, telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. One of the best parts about doing this is that each week when we sit down to write and research a new topic, we learn things. And then I get to take the things that I learn and I bring them to you, and we all collectively learn as a group. It's this fantastic cycle of learning and teaching and learning. And in celebration of this cycle, we like to talk about what we've taken away each week. So, Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, Dave, my big takeaway, we kind of touched on it just before closing, talking about the website, is just it's amazing how this whole genre realistically stemmed from a mod of a game that people loved, and how it wasn't just developers that thought this new crazy idea and were like, hey, let's run with this. It was the gaming community that's like, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I really want to do. I really want to see this through. And they helped the developers to create this. And we talk about it a lot, how a lot of games come from players, the people who enjoy this content, going and modifying things. And it just never ceases to amaze me to see just how much the gamers, are able to accomplish when they put their mind to it. No different than the developers. But that at the end of the day, you're not getting paid for it. You're doing this because you're passionate about it, and it's what you want to do. It's what you want to release, and it's always kind of inspirational to just see what the players are able to accomplish when they put their heads down and do. So that's my big takeaway. What about yourself?
I really enjoyed this trajectory. I learned this whole story was new to me, and it was kind of fun watching how this little mod became a map for Warcraft 3, and then someone took that because people started making all these clones basically and said, okay, we're going to take the best of the best and we're going to make the greatest map that ever was. And that's what stuck. And that's what still is around essentially in a lot of ways this many years later. I think that's fascinating. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Absolutely, as you should.
All right, Rob. Well, before we take it out of here for today, is there anything else that you'd like to add to today's episode?
I'll take a quick moment to say thank you so much to all of our listeners. It means the world to us as we talk about all of the rage inducing games that we all love to play, that you decide to join and learn about them with us. So we hope that you continue to learn. If you're new, we thank you for joining us. If you've been here, we thank you for continuing on this journey with us. And we look forward to teaching you more and more about the games we love and enjoy.
All right. As we leave the battlegrounds of Dota and its MOBA successors, we're reminded of how a simple Warcraft 3 mod grew into a global phenomenon. Its emphasis on strategy, teamwork, and competition redefined gaming culture and shaped esports as we know it. So, whether you're rallying your team or mastering your role, always remember the grassroots power of gaming communities. Next week, though, we're trading the strategic battlegrounds of Dota for the chaotic, punishing world of Battletoads. Released in 1991, this cult classic introduced a trio of trash talking amphibians and a gameplay experience as bold as it was unforgiving. From the infamous Turbo Tunnel to battling space rats, Battletoads became a test of skill, patience, and sheer determination. Join us as we dive into the history of these radical reptiles on next week's Leap Field trip down memory card lane. To the thing.
Skibidim dap dap dab doo wop ba dum ba ba da ba